How we feeling, everybody? How's it going? I swear I don't go live for 5 minutes and I have a bunch of people like texting me, DMing me. I have you in the chat. Like, y'all need to be like the drivers and learn some damn patience. All joking aside, how is it going, everyone? Long race, man. Long race. I want to know what you think in the chat out of 10. Give me 10 out of 10 being the best race you've seen at Talladega, 1 out of 10 being the worst. And let's see what we got here. And then, yes, the margin of victory, 6/1000ths of a second. Lots of 10s, 9s, and 8s I'm seeing here. A lot of positivity. I'm seeing a lot of positivity from it. A lot of 7s, too. I'll personally go on the 8 side. I was going 9 for Big Wreck. It sucks seeing so many people get taken out in that. But still, I think a pretty kick-ass race, all things considered. Now, before we get too far into it, for those who might have missed, NBC went off the air really quick, so I don't blame you if you did. We have the current playoff standings. William Byron fans, be happy. Your driver has advanced to the next round. He can just go for broke at the Roval, which is probably what he'll do. He's pretty good at road courses. From there, Bell plus 57, Larson plus 52. Larson coming home in 4th with a great finish today. A lot of people did not see that one coming, but good job on the Larson front. Good job, Danny B, for picking 2 Hendrick guys in the top 5, and it was Willie B and Kyle Larson 3rd and 4th. But those two should be pretty good. Denny Hamlin comes home 10th, which is good enough for him to be plus 30 and 4th. Alex Bowman 5th plus 26. Plus 25 even after finishing 39th is Ryan Blaney. Reddick plus 14 and 7th on the cut line. The man on the cut line is Chase Elliott plus 13. 13 over Joey Logano, who will be the first one out in 9th. 20 back for Suarez, 29 back for Cindric, and 32 back for Chase Briscoe. So those are your playoff standings as we look at it now. I'm just getting all of the finishing order put together on my end. So here's what we got. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., solid super speedway racer just about everywhere that they go, gets the win today in a race that was 195 laps long out of the 188 intended. 3 hours, 26 minutes, 24 seconds. 66 lead changes on the day, just 22 shy of the NASCAR record for lead changes in a race of 88. So 66 lead changes among 24 leaders. 4 caution flags on the day, including some pretty big wrecks and pretty big hits. Yeah, Stenhouse with the win. Wins in a 3-wide finish, 6/1000ths of a second over Brad Keselowski. We'll talk a bit about Brad in a bit, especially when it comes to the huge, the biggest, big one, the biggest one, 28-car wreck. He was involved in a way with that one. William Byron tried to make a move at the end. He wasn't going to get a win, but he ended up finishing 3rd, only 200ths of a second back. Actually, looking at it now, the top 5 was only separated by a 10th because Kyle Larson comes home 800ths back in 4th. Again, solid run for Larson on that one. Then Eric Jones, a top 5 in the 43 Legacy Motor Club. A brief reprieve from a pretty terrible year. Then you got Bell in 6th. Haley, 7th in the 7 car. Austin Dillon, which I don't know if you meant to in the chat. I saw some using this name. I saw it being used on Twitter. Some calling him Fail Earnhardt because he drives a 3. But Austin Dillon, all those jokes can be thrown aside for today. Did get a solid 8th place run. Bubba Wallace in 9th. Denny Hamlin, top 10 finish on the day after spending most of the day just sort of lurking in the back. From there, Martin Truex Jr. in 11th. Cody Ware, solid 12th place finish. Ty Gibbs, 13th. Hocevar in 14th. SVG comes home 15th position today in the 16. Ran pretty well again. He ran pretty well yesterday before getting crashed out. Ran pretty well today. Ran the top 5 at different stints of this race. So solid run for SVG. 16th, Alex Bowman, but that's enough to be the 5th best playoff driver today. Solid run all day, just got caught up in that wreck at the end. Busher in 17th, Corey LaJoy in 18th, Kyle Busch drifts all the way back to 19th after being shuffled out with about 6 to go. And rounding out the first half of the field in 20th is Tyler Reddick, who comes home about a second and a half off, just limping to the finish. Zane Smith in 21st and BJ McLeod 22nd, the final driver on the lead lap. Todd Gilliland lap down in 23rd, as is Alfredo in 24th and 25th place. Noah Gragson, Suarez 26th. Yaley 2 laps down in 27th. Then 2 laps down as well for AJ Allmendinger in 28th position. And from there, 2 left on the track. Only 30 cars finished on track in this race. 5 laps down for Chase Elliott in 29th, and 6 laps down for Chase Briscoe in 30th. From here, rest of these guys, I think, are all out, except they just... I swear, NASCAR. Okay, so 7 laps down is John Hunter Nemechek. So it'll be a moment before we put the post-race ticker up there. They just changed it. They had Nemechek all the way back in 35th, but he will finish 31st today, 7 laps down. So Nemechek, the last one on track. From there, you have Cindric in 32nd. You have Logano 33rd, Burton in 34th. 35th is Preece. And then from there, 36th, Josh Berry. 37th McDowell, 38th Hemrick, 39th Blaney, the lowest finishing playoff guy of the day. And Ross Chastain, last week's winner, comes home dead last today in the 37th position. So there is that. Got the order all good to go. So there it is up there. Let me know. I probably said somebody's name wrong up there. But that is the finishing order of this race. And I'll say this. I think that this was a noticeable, granted, there was still the fuel strategy and saving. There was definitely still a need for improvement on this because it was difficult when they did get gridlocked, but it was not impossible to get through. It was actually, you saw a couple drivers today get through during gridlock and drafting lines and stuff like that. Guys like William Byron, Denny Hamlin got up through the pack pretty quick. I saw BJ McLeod even did at one point. So it was not like a couple other ones where you just sort of sit in line 3 wide the whole time. The lines actually had a bit more movement, whether it's the aero changes that NASCAR made heading into today or not. That's, I think, up to question. But overall, I thought it was a much more solid showing from the next gen than we've had of late at Talladega. Daytona has seemingly been about a step or 2 ahead of Talladega. Atlanta's just been designed for this car, so it should run well at Atlanta. But overall, I thought that this was a really good improvement. And I want to put a poll up for you guys about this, because maybe I'm off base. So I want to know if there we go. It's not letting me do a poll. I don't know what's going on. Here we go. I want to know what direction is the super speedway package going at this point. I don't know why, but it's just like really slow today. And it's a YouTube thing. Every time I keep like typing something up or make something or whatever, it'll just, because I'll still be up, but you guys like, so I'll still be up. You see me. And then from there, it'll just completely go down on my end, even though the OBS is still running fine and everything. So everything will be fine. So if you hear me go, oh, I went down, it's literally just my page here that went down. So let's get this poll put up here and have it. Positive, negative. I could just put a meme, but I want an actual serious answer. Little change. What direction is the super speedway package going? And it should go up now. I personally think it's a positive direction at this point. Call me a NASCAR shill, call me a homer, call me whatever you will. I know there'll be people that definitely do disagree. I don't think it's perfect, all right? I kind of compared it to like 2017, 2018, that Gen 6 range, kind of the lower end of it. If you remember, a lot of people remember the Gen 6 era pre-giant-ass spoiler, pre-crazy-ass runs. The more I think of how people explain that package, the more it's almost, you could call it the ass package, because everyone has some kind of giant ass, crazy ass, wild ass finish on it. I don't think it's anywhere near that per se, but if you remember, like the Gen 6 era, a lot of it was the leader got in front, controlled the lines, and it was a gridlock behind the leader. Usually it was Joey Logano or Dale Earnhardt Jr. And to me, it's kind of similar to that, not completely. I don't think it's on that level yet. But again, I do think this is definitely a positive direction, way more than I think a lot of people will give it credit for. I think it needs a lot of work still. I was happy not seeing a flip today. But overall, I thought a very solid showing at the track that is having the biggest issue with this. I mean, there was a solid run. You see it on the thumbnail where it was like 3, 4, and 5 wide, and they were actually racing all out for most of it. Now, some of it, of course, was fuel saving, but I liked it. Now, this is one race. We'll see at Daytona next year if they can make some real substantial changes to make it a little easier for cars to make their own moves without having to have a whole line of run behind them. That, I think, is the next step for sure. But for now, I like the direction. I'm not leaving Talladega today being like, man, I am not looking forward to the Daytona 500. Like, I actually am, because I think the way it goes right now, the super speedway quality of racing right now, it's Atlanta first, because the car is designed for the track and the track is designed for the car, mix and match, whatever. Daytona, I think they figured that out a lot better, especially in the summer race. And then Talladega's been, I think, lagging behind a little bit. Probably tell by the way that the stands were half full. But I'm much more positive about it than I was probably after I'd say the spring race, after sitting down and thinking about it. I'm much more positive about it after 2023, 2022. So, don't take any criticism as me just being like, oh, I hated it. Like, I liked it. I had a lot of fun today, and I think a lot of you had a lot of fun too. Talking about some other big points here before we go into kind of a point by point on it. You know what? I know we're supposed to go point by point through it, and I'll kind of bury the lead, save some of the big stuff. Let's talk about the big one. All right, NASCAR officially puts it at 28 cars involved, which I think modern era is like the biggest one. I know there's been bigger crashes, but when they count it modern era, super speedway, big ones especially, I think that is the biggest one in Cup. I think Xfinity has had way bigger before. I think they had like a 30-car wreck, like, I think, 2002, 2003. I don't know. It's like over 20 years ago. But I saw a lot of people passing the blame game around. We're going to end the poll here. 73% of you are positive, 20% say little change, 7% of you say it's going the wrong direction. So I saw the blame game going around a little bit about the big one, about the huge one, about the biggest one, whatever we want to call it. So I'm just going to, I'll put another poll on this one. A lot of people were blaming Brad Keselowski. A lot of people were blaming Cindric, and a lot of people were saying it was a racing deal. I want to know what you think. I'm going to put it up right before what I say, because I don't want to influence it too awful much. So poll going up right here. But 2002 Busch Dega was 25 cars. Damn. But here's the way I saw it. Okay, the way I saw it is the two got way out there. Not the greatest thing to do as the leader. Lost momentum, lost speed, went right back to the 6. I think the 6, with a bunch of momentum behind him, gets into him, sends it off. If you're looking strictly from what caused what, I think it was the 6 hitting the 2. Personally, I think it was a racing deal. I really don't think that Brad Keselowski did anything too stupid per se. There were some stupid moves. We'll talk about Daniel Suarez in a minute, making probably the dumbest move of the race. But I don't say, it was really anyone's fault all that much. I think it was, if you want to put it on somebody for sparking it, sure, I guess Brad, but he's doing what he has to do at the end of these races. We've seen that kind of pushing before. It wasn't like he just sort of went right on the corner of the bumper. We've seen that this year. It wasn't like he, was not clear and pulled a Brian Vickers. I think he got into him too hard, which, with this car, the way that this drafting is, you do have to kind of slam somebody to get that momentum going. So I'm not gonna go off on Brad Keselowski. It's looking like This is why I wanted to wait until I said it, so that you guys could have a chance to vote. It's looking like I didn't influence it too much since talking about it. 75% of you say it's a racing deal, kind of 75, 76%, 19% on Brad, and 5% on Cindric, you guys are saying. But that was a huge turning point, not only in the race, obviously, but that could be a huge turning point in the championship. A lot of really good, really fast guys, a lot of guys who can be threats in the next round, taken out or heavily damaged in that. Tyler Reddick is the first one I think of. I know others were DNF'd by it, like Chase Elliott, or almost DNF'd by it. I know Alex Bowman was hindered by it. But, Tyler Reddick, 20th place finish out of the 22 on the lead lap. Him managing to stay on the lead lap might be a really big deal. That probably saved him a solid handful of points speed-wise. But he's going to be on that bubble line. And if something happened to the Roval, it's a wild track. It's a new, what do you call it? Circuit, layout. It's a new layout. You can't guarantee that somebody who's normally good is going to be good, or someone that's normally good on road courses is going to be good on the Roval, because it's such a different beast. I think he'll be all right. I think Elliott will be all right. He's plus 13. The real winner by all of that was Ryan Blaney, who now is plus 25 and has a solid gap heading into Charlotte. Configuration's another word. Thank you, Noah. But that's a big turning point, and it could be a big turning point for others too. Denny Hamlin, before that crash, I believe, was running in the 30s. Because if you remember, there were 38 cars left on the racetrack when this crash happened. I'm looking at the way it's running now. He was 4 seconds off. Team had a bad pit stop again, and it put him way, way back. Instead of finishing, let's just be generous here. Let's say just instead of finishing 32nd, we'll be generous on it. He probably was a little higher, a little lower. I don't know exactly where he was running at that point. But instead of finishing 32nd, he finishes 10th. That's a 22-point gain, right? So that means instead of being plus 30, he would have been plus 7 because of the other positions moving around because of it, or plus 8. That's a huge change. That is a 20-plus point swing in snap of a finger. So big deal there. And yeah, Spencer, we just passed Josh Bilicki in the Arby's car again from Bristol. You can probably make that the joke for the rest of the year. So big moment. The big first one we'll look at here was Daniel Suarez. So he goes down to the pits. He is penalized. He had to go to the rear and do a passer at the start for unapproved adjustments. He does that, gets lapped on about lap 12, I want to say it was very early, which makes it even, I think, more inexcusable of a dumb move. Getting lapped, and he tries to force himself into the top line in front of BJ McLeod, causing him to crash himself, give damage to the 78, who was an innocent bystander in all of this. And it was clear as day he was feeling the pressure, being behind the 8 ball right away. But it's Talladega, right? You can make up those spots. Like we said, in the first stage alone, William Byron went from, I believe, 33rd or 36th, somewhere in the back there at one point, to 3rd. You're looking at some of the other guys that got pushed back a little bit, So there were a couple guys that made moves like that, got back up to the front at different points. It's not the end of the world. The broadcast kind of framed it. I don't go off their framing for this because it's like the only thing I can think would make sense is that he thought he would fall off the pack. There's no way he would. There's no way he would. I mean, he about LePage the field on lap 12. It's like, come on, man. Like, you got to be smarter than that. Like, I think he's smarter than that as a driver. But just a plainly stupid move in any way that you cut it. But those are really the big points of this race. There's plenty of other things to talk about. Trust me, we'll talk about the 4-wide racing in a bit. I will get to the super chats at the end of the summary and all that. I'm trying to keep an eye on the pack there. Maybe that's what I'll call the chat, the pack. Just got stuck in the mind right now. Yeah, I mean, Bill's right. The 99 panicked. He panicked with 176 left to go in regulation, and it put him behind from the get-go. He was 2 laps down at one point. He was fighting for the lucky dog all day. He never got back on the lead lap. He finished a lap down in 26th. And had he just been patient, waited and sat at the back of the pack, maybe it would have been a bit before he got that lap back, or maybe he would have had to move his way forward. But he probably would have got his lap back. Now, he probably also would have been collected worse in that wreck at the end. But coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? He could have run up there and maybe gotten some stage points, maybe not been 20 points in the hole heading into the Roval. So there is that. But let's talk about the race from the start. Let's go from there and roll at that point. We'll get to Blaney's wreck. We'll get to all of that. Michael McDowell, 6th pole of the year. Jesus, man, that's just nuts. 6 poles this year for the 34 team. Pretty sure they're like all super speedway ones, except maybe one. I'm forgive me, I'm not that much of a Michael McDowell fan to keep that much track. But it feels like every single super speedway, he's starting on the pole or near the pole. So the Texans just won, or at least the summary of it. But on top of Suarez going to the back for unapproved adjustments and having to serve a penalty, Christopher Bell had to go to the rear for unapproved adjustments before the race. And do you know where Christopher Bell finished compared to Daniel Suarez? 20 spots higher in 6th. So, again, you could recover. Now, granted, was not as severe of a penalty as the 99 had, but still, just saying, you can recover. It's Talladega. Like, this place is made for stupid, funny recoveries. NASCAR shill in there. It's amazing how many people don't know that NASCAR shill, from the name alone, is a parody. We talked about Suarez again, crashed himself. I'm not going to beat that dead horse too much. I'm sure he's probably going to beat himself up over it this week too, as well as all of us. We'll talk about it Wednesday on Danny B's channel for NWP, so be sure to check that out. And yes, Richard, Skoll, 5-0. 5-0 never felt so stressful. But it was, for the most part, 3x3 and 4x4. I just stopped taking notes and I literally wrote and because it's a meme and it just seemed to fit in the moment. I tweeted it too. I put, the European mind cannot comprehend. Joke, obviously. But it was just 3x3, 4x4. That thumbnail you got, I had a completely different thumbnail at one point. I had for the thumbnail, I literally had just the Talladega Nights car ready to go. I'm like, there you go. And that's a funny meme. Everyone will like it. And then that happened. I'm like, nope. We got to put that on there because that is just badass. And that's the thing. I thought this whole first stage was badass. 3 wide, 4 wide. I think at one point they were 5 wide. Which I don't know how they didn't cause a big one at that point. I know they were trying to take care of each other on top of that, but just really, really fun watching them basically just take up the entire track. And again, what I liked about it is, while if you were in the back, if you were like 30th, you were screwed. This is why I say that you definitely still need changes to this. Yes, I would have jinxed the Priest car. And, looking at the finishing order, it looks like it did. But this is why I say needs to be improvement. If you're 30th, if you're 20th or so, you're kind of stuck back there. You can move around if the line moves, but you're kind of screwed. And to be fair, that's a lot of aero packages in the last 20 or so years. But there was movement up towards the front. If you were in the top 10 to 15, you could move your way line to line, get up front. We saw the lead shuffling over and over again. Now, ultimately, it got back down to like 3 wide, then 2 wide for the most part. But finishing the stage, it was Buescher getting the stage win over Stenhouse, Byron, Larson, Bell, Reddick, Chastain, Briscoe, Cindric, and Blaney. Meaning, of the first stage top 10 finishers, I believe that 7 of them were playoff guys. So there is that. And the thing is every time they had a restart, they didn't have many cautions. They only had 4 cautions today. But anytime they had a restart for a stage or a long run, it would start the same way, right? So like starting out, Stage 2, it's 17 and the 45 up front. They go 2x2 for a bit, 3x3 in the back, kind of storming up, and they would just sort of go 3x3, save a little fuel at the start, but then race really, really damn hard the rest of the way. I mean, we saw plenty of guys who kind of shuffled their way up through fuel mileage saving, as well as just through the draft in general. Guys, I mean, Rick Ware Racing was leading at different points, both of them. AJ Allmendinger led a good portion of this race. Of course, about halfway through, there was green flag pit stops, which took place over like a 20-lap span. Just as like the 6 and the 38 would miss entrance on the first part. And then the Toyota's pitted like on about 10 laps into the run. Then about another 10 laps, and by the way, MTJ spun around that point, not that they really covered it all too much. And then like the rest of them came in about 20 laps from the start of that. Of course, the pack comes back together. We have others pitting for different strategy, trying to get to the end. But it ends out with a big crash. Hard hits for Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain. The way it kind of looked to me is that Bowman got into a stalling out Ryan Blaney in the tri-oval where the cars are incredibly free. And if you look in the past, bump drafting in the tri-oval, it is like it's playing a game of roulette. Like either you're getting sent or you're sending somebody else. That one, I almost feel like that one's a little more egregious than the Brad Keselowski one personally. Though the way that they have to bump with these cars and the way that the runs do die down very quickly with them, I can't say it's all that different from what Bowman did to Blaney compared to what Brad Keselowski did to the field. You know, I know that people will play favorites back and forth. I know you have a favorite like Ryan Blaney taking out, people will be upset. A favorite like Alex Bowman involved, people won't be, compared to Brad Keselowski and Austin Cindric. But I think it's pretty fairly similar. You saw a lot of movement in the pack. I think Kyle Busch was one of them that made a move up to the top. You saw all that energy disappear from that line. It just seemed very similar personally to me. But that collected 22 and 11 a little bit. They were able to continue just fine. But the 12, and again, a vicious hit. Another hard hit by Ryan Blaney at a super speedway over the span of the last, 13, 14 months. And Ross Chastain, too. His car was on fire. And at first, I know a lot of people in the chat here were worried because he wasn't putting the window net down. The car was on fire. Definitely looked a little dazed out of the car, or at least based on his body language. He kind of seemed like he needed a little help up more from the safety crew. But from the looks of it, from the way he sounded, sounds like he's all good. Ryan Blaney was more perturbed than hurt, which I'm happy with. I'd rather a pissed off driver than a hurt driver. So glad that they're both all good. And that leads us to the final stage here. Get back going with about 60 to go. And again, it's 3x3 again, 4 wide at different points, and you're just holding your breath because you know it's just going to keep ratcheting up. It's just going to get more and more aggressive. You know that people are going to try more and more different moves. And you know it's all leading to green flag pit stops, which I was surprised. I thought we were going to see our crash, our big one, with green flag pit stops because I've seen it so many times at Talladega where somebody's going to try and go from like the third lineup or the second lineup. They're going to try and cut across thinking that guy underneath them's pitting or thinking they have the hole, and they're just going to get, you know, ass packed in the back by somebody and set it off. And this is the same thing since the 2000s. I don't want people like, oh my God, you know, it's a next gen thing. Like, no, like next gen has plenty of issues, but this is just something that super speedways have had for a long time. And trust me, we're going to talk about the DVP in a minute. But, and yes, Frank, I will watch From at some point. I know you're not going to leave me alone about that until I do, so I might as well just acknowledge that. But it was just a couple just rounds of different guys. You know, you have 4 at first, then you have a couple more pit a few laps later, then all the Chevys would come down, then the Fords and Toyotas. The only real penalty with that issue was the 38 too fast entering, and then they didn't cover on the broadcast, but Denny Hamlin had a bad stop that lucked him out of the crash. But 15 to go, we get the pack back together. Kyle Busch, that was like the theme of the day. Kyle Busch getting up towards the front, making a move, and the pack saying, see ya, buddy, and shuffling him out. Like, that's just the way it seemed to me today. And it was Ricky Stenhouse leading the charge up to the front, fighting Cindric for the lead. Ford versus Chevrolet. Nobody can get ahead. It's constant just beating and banging back and forth, bump drafting. One guy trying to get another up front. And then by the time we get to 5 to go, the biggest one breaks out. 28 cars involved. Absolute destruction. Red flag is out. And we know we're already going to overtime. We talked a bit about the damage on that. Let's talk about the damage vehicle policy, though. The DVP. And I want to pull on that one with you guys, too. So here's what we're going to do. What do you want done with the DVP. And there's 3 options we'll leave. Leave as is, clarify it, eliminate it. Because it has just been so just confusing is the best way I can put it. That's the best way I can put it. It's just confusing at this point. You have some cars who are stuck who have to get towed. Some cars saying that they can just drive back with a push out of the grass. Other cars getting towed back, to the garage, some to their pit stall. And I get that NASCAR has like specific rulings for it. Like, if X, Y, or Z thing happens, you have to go to the garage. If, A, B, and C things happened, you can go back to your pit stall. At the bare minimum, they need to just have a flat policy with all of it. At the bare minimum. I don't want them to change it mid-season, just because, or during mid-playoffs, whatever you want to call it, just because they made so many of these snap decisions before that end up biting them in the ass, or just changing the rules at inopportune times. I don't think it's necessarily, especially with the remaining races. You got the Roval, Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, and Phoenix. I really don't think that we're going to see too awful much the way we would at a bigger, faster track. The intermediates to me are the ones that like we might see some stuff at, maybe at the Roval if some chicanery, tomfoolery happens. But I don't think it's necessary to change it at this point. You're kind of you've won 31 races with it. You might as well just finish the last 5 out. But I think at the minimum this needs to be clarified insanely a lot more, and it needs to be put out by NASCAR. I don't want to tune into Fox and have them bumble their way through it and completely screw it up. I want to know from NASCAR, like right after the season ends. By the way, here's what we're going to change about this and this. At the minimum, if it's up to me, get rid of the damn rule. It causes more problems than good at this point anymore. You see cars who can clearly might just need a couple more minutes of repairs and can finish and can go for more points. You can see them being taken out of the race because of this. And to me, it takes an element out of the race of like, if this wreck happened instead of with 5 to go, it happened on lap 5, well, then you're looking at probably about 10, 12 different storylines that end. Some of them playoff ones, if you want to keep looking at the playoff angle of it, because God forbid we talk about anything other than that on an NBC broadcast. I think that it just, to me, I get it's like a cost-saving thing. I get it, we don't want more cautions, all of that stuff. But how many times do we have to keep making these kind of rules, either for cost-saving or to, streamline the race, as NASCAR would put it, but continuously just piss off fans with it? None of those guys that got eliminated would have run for the win, no matter when that crash was, I don't think. But there's... Oh, wow. Sorry, I'm just watching a plane crash on TV. None of those would have competed for the win or even probably on the lead lap. But I just think of how many times drivers would come back on track and gain just a couple points, right? They'd be running like 42nd after the crash, and they end up finishing like 38th or 39th. Or like, putting it into today's perspective, they'd be running like 36th, right? Get 1 point on the day, and then if they're able to continue and they ended up, instead of having to be out at that point, they ended up like 12 laps down, 13 laps down, they end up 34th. Well, those 2 points, 3 points, however many they would end up making up, that could be a big difference, especially as how razor thin these margins get at the end of these rounds. Like I think it would actually add a bit of drama for NASCAR personally. Plus, I always love seeing the modifieds that teams would make, where they just tear the entire freaking front off the car and be like, "Looks good, boss. Go for it." So that's me on it. I see NASCAR Shill is disagreeing. I'm very surprised by that. But that's just my take on it. I see a lot of you guys, about half you guys want to eliminate it. 53% say eliminate the rule. 42% want to clarify the rule, and 5% want to leave it as is. We'll let that poll roll for a little bit. But after the red flag comes out, we get it back going. Because again, all the stuff with the 14 and the 9, and like, why is the 9 going to push out, but the 14 doesn't? Like, all of this, at the bare minimum, clarify the rule, or just have a blank rule, or just be like, hey, we'll push you out, and if you can move, you can move. If you can't, you're done. Like, whatever the hell it has to be. I don't like when we have a huge gray area and it doesn't need to be there. Sometimes gray areas have to be there and ball and strike calls need to be made. This, I don't think, is one of those aspects, personally. I just don't think it is. But we go to overtime, 47-6 up front, battling for the win. Stenhouse has Byron and Bush behind him, whereas Brad has Larson and Bell. So we got 3 Chevys on the high line versus a Ford, Chevy, and Toyota on the bottom. 47 gets clear right away. Brad fights back, and it's sort of that back and forth, the yo-yo effect. There were not enough cars, I don't think, at least that had minimal enough damage to actually run fast to be able to make that third line and make it effective, and it showed towards the end there. Nobody really formed up anything behind them. Some tried, like Kyle Busch, who got, again, shuffled out because that's just was the name of the day for Kyle today. And the 6 and the 47 just remained side by side, back and forth. Larson did push Brad out on the last lap through 3 and 4. Larson gave the 6 a huge push. He got out there. He probably could have thrown a block on Stenhouse. Whether it would have worked or not is a question. Sorry, I got like a frog in my throat. Whether it would have worked out is a different question, because it could have just been like Michael McDowell and just caused a crash, though McDowell's is more because of a double move. But he didn't throw the block. He decided to basically let them race to the line. They didn't really slam each other or anything kind of too egregious either. 24 made the move, and from there, 6 1,000ths of a second, baby. Hell yeah. That close ass finish. I just ripped the paper. That was paper that I ripped, not wind. But all in all, I thought a pretty fun, solid race today. I think a lot of people are going to hate on it because a lot of people just really do not like this car, or don't like super speedway racing. Fair. Trust me, there's a lot of times, especially on short tracks, where I do not like this car. But I thought today was a good step, a good couple steps in the right direction. Couple of news things. I don't know if you guys heard, and we'll talk about it a little bit on Wednesday night as well on Danny B's channel for NWP. But they're going to do a wet weather tire test at Homestead coming up, 1.5-mile track. So that's going to be interesting to see the results there. If they can make any inroads on wet or damp tires on 1.5 miles, I'm really cool with that, man. Really cool with that. But yeah. And I love how it's like I'll look in the chat about the race, and it's like positive, bitching about it, bitching about somebody, bitching about it, bitching about somebody, bitching about somebody, bitching about it, complaining about somebody, complaining about it, complaining about the complainer to begin with. So it's funny to me. But yeah, I thought pretty solid. Let's look at the super chats you guys got. Man, my throat is dry right now. I don't know what's up. I don't know what's up with me today. Let's do wet Talladega now. Oh yeah, that'll be a fun one. Wet Talladega, if you go in the infield, has a way different connotation than it does with the joke you made. I'll just say that. There's a lot of chicanery and fun stuff in the infield at Talladega. Not made for family-friendly shows or just shows that would want to stay on this website to begin with. There's a certain hub for that. I'll just put it like that. Steve for the 5. Driver Council is going to have an intervention with Brad Keselowski. He is getting too good at wrecking the field. I know where you stand on it. And Steve for the 10. Great race. BK should have been parked. I disagree. Poor TJ Majors is going to hear about it on Door Bumper Clear. I will not be listening. Just bought tickets for Vegas and Phoenix's Rattlesnake Hill. Can't wait. Haven't seen these cars yet in person. Definitely get some ear protection. These cars are loud as hell. And I love that. No mufflers. No quietness. I love the loudness. If I don't come back half deaf from a race, I haven't been enjoying it. God, I don't know what's up with me today. I apologize. Twin spinner for the 2. NASCAR, get out. Chase, make me. Yeah, the standoff of the century. Chase Briscoe versus random official trying to do his job. CBB with the 5 here. Lee Diffie. He's done it, Jeff. Your little boy's been taken out in the biggest one of all time. You guys kill me with these. M. Martin fan with the 17-month member chat. No problem, number 9. You can fix it. Last week, number 4. Get out. Yeah. Yep. It's just like they got to pick and choose situations. And this week, they ended up having the 14 go back. It's like, oh, it's a common denominator among the 9 and 14 teams. The drivers' names are Chase. No, I'm kidding. They're both playoff guys. So they're going to bend the rules. SW with 5. This is what Talladega is all about, y'all. Congrats to Recce Spinhouse. Nice to see Bubba at the top 10. Oh, the bigger one? Insane. Yeah, it was the bigger one. And Bubba got a top 10, and old Recce Spinhouse got the win. Fred Dog with the 5. 4 restricted plate wins and nothing else. Michael Waltrip's real favorite drivers in Daniel Ty. It's Ricky Stenhouse. Ricky Stenhouse. Ricky Stenhouse. It's said 3 times. Is his name like Beetlejuice? I say it 3 times and Ricky Stenhouse will show up. Sly Supersonic with a 530. Interesting number. Is it just me? Or was Kyle Busch the only driver from 5th on back who actually tried to win this race? That race was great. The finish was garbage. 8 out of 10. I think it's just that a lot of the guys up there, I mean, you look at the way that they finished. Byron, Larson, Bell. A lot of the guys who probably could have pulled the trigger on that and tried and made a move are protecting something. You know, they're protecting their playoff spot. And if you're stuck on the bottom with somebody who doesn't want to move, you can't really make a move. So that's probably why some people didn't make a move, whereas like the 8 did. Reverend Rasheem Hall Stewart with the 2. Who is the best super speedway driver to you now? Still Dale Earnhardt. I'll go with the Earnhardt, but I am biased on that. But I go Dale Earnhardt, and then like a tie with second for Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon. That's just me. Brad Keselowski was like, if you've looked at it, it is like past stats at super speedways. It's kind of funny. Like he's great at Talladega, and he can't do jack squat anywhere else. It's kind of funny. Like he has like the win at Daytona, but you know it's like his average is noticeably worse there. It's kind of funny to me. I think you need to be good at both of those to be in that top ranking, you know, in those top levels personally. Fred Dog with the 5. You get sucker punch, and the guy sucker punching you wins before you do. I don't know what hurts more for Kyle Busch, his jaw or his ego. That's kind of funny. NASCAR Fanatic, 2425, a 2-month member chat. So far, no playoff drivers have won this round. Yep. I have a feeling one of them will win the Roval, though. I won't say who. You got to watch on Wednesday on Danny B's channel for the NWP for that. Me, Danny, and Eric will talk all about it. Wizard King Nick, a 3-month member chat. Reddick's been looking bad in these playoffs. Yeah, that team's just off, man. I don't know what the deal is, but that 45 team, and it's not, you know, a super speedway race is something in its own right. But just speed-wise, that 45 team went from a top 5 speed car every week to like barely scratching the top 10. Michael with the 2, shades of 2012. If you're talking about the 4-5 wide racing, yeah, definitely. Scott, what's going, bud? With the 10, DVP, good intended rule, but situations like today just cause major issues and confusion. Also, it's very frustrating that CW hasn't shown the Xfinity races here in Michigan. Should put it back on USA, in my opinion. They paid a lot of money, unfortunately, but yeah, I do wish they would get their crap together. Jordan in the chat, coincidence with the lawsuit. If you're talking about Reddick, I don't know if it's much that, because they just filed the lawsuit and he hasn't been good for a little bit now. But it might be. Maybe the entire organization is just off focus right now. But as for the DVP, Scott, again, I do think good intended rule in a lot of ways, but they just do not, they do not execute it well. NASCAR is very good at making simple confusing. Like if you look since 2004, NASCAR is very good at making simple things incredibly confusing. A Prada with the 10. If you rewatch a 2002 Busch Series race, there was a 32 car crash in lap 15. That crash was so large that Fox miscounted the amount of cars involved in the crash. Biggest crash of all time. Yeah, that's why I'm not going to put it on the title, but I did say biggest one in Cup. VA Sensation for the 2. Hurts to see Recchi win before Kyle Busch. Hey, I'm just saying. I made that video saying that there should be a real conversation on if Kyle Busch will win again. He is older, a lot of other things. I do think he still has a lot of opportunities left. And everybody kept telling me, no, he's going to win this weekend at Talladega, bro. Just saying, it's not a guarantee, man. Grant with the 2 says, ask Danny B how the Vols did against my Hogs. I saw that. That was funny. Tennessee fans are probably really happy that Alabama outshined them in being upset. I'll say that. Rowdy 8 diecast with the 2. Only reason 3 and 4 wide happened was because of fuel saving. They still were going all out in different points of that, but I think a lot of it was fuel saving, but it was not the entire reason. They were still able to race 3 and 4 wide going for broke at different points. Holy Jesus, the Giants beat the Seahawks? Or are about to? Holy crap. It is just a weekend of upsets, man. Immortal with the 5 says, I think that this era of NASCAR drivers, they are the best at plate racing. Seriously, these guys could go 3 and 4 wide and not wreck. I don't think so necessarily. San Francisco lost. Damn, man. A lot of upsets, if that's true. I had to double check. Well, they're losing. Yeah. Wow. Weird weekend. No, I personally think that the generation that retired a couple of years back, the Dale Juniors, the Jeff Gordons, Jimmy Johnsons, Tony Stewarts, Matt Kenseths, I think those personally are the better drivers at super speedways. The different packages, different situations, things like that. I personally think overall they were the better drivers. Plus, they lived in more of an era of give or take where they didn't have to crash, as much, at least until, a certain point. Personally, I think they're better. But to each their own. A Prada with the 5. In 04 at Dover, Elliott Sadler crashed early and lost about 10 laps. Without the DVP, he returned and finished 18th at the end of the race. Get rid of the DVP. I'm right with you, man. Those stories would be eliminated from NASCAR history. I mean, some of the best stories in NASCAR history would be eliminated because of current rules. Dale Earnhardt flipping in the 97 Daytona 500 and then getting back in the car and finishing the race wouldn't have happened under the current set of rules, So Dale Jr., his 4th straight win at Talladega, he would have been eliminated early because of how many pit stops he made, and if he wasn't eliminated from it and just had a more battered car, probably would not have recovered to win the race. So, but for each one of those, you could also look at like, hey, certain debris caution wouldn't come out that would change the course of NASCAR history had, this car that's 100 laps down just been out of the race. So I get both sides of it, but the side I'm going to fall in on that one. Chris with Canadian 5. Brad may be one of the aggressive drivers, but at least he makes smart decisions when it comes to blocking. Yeah, I trust him blocking and leading the field more than I trust Joey Logano. I'll say that. Brandon says every time when Joey leads more laps at Daytona or Talladega, he always crashes out or gets into trouble. It's kind of funny that's the one that followed it up. Rowdy 8 diecast with the 2 says at least my Commanders, they're the Redskins. I will always call them the Redskins. I don't care if I get demonetized for it. They're the Redskins. Are good for once, unlike Kyle Busch. It is funny that for your fandom of that, like the one year that the Redskins are good, Kyle Busch is bad. Marky Mark with a 5. I'm very late to your stream. As a Blaney fan, that ending worked out for him. Now on to the Roval. Yes, now on to the Roval. And it did work out very well for him. It could have been much worse. It's like that scene at Jurassic Park. Could have been worse, John. A lot worse. Red Dog with 5. Just remember the DVP would have cost Benny Parsons the championship in 75 and Petty's last race at Atlanta. Yeah, a lot of good storylines that could have been cut out by that. I think that's something that people should keep in mind. That full perspective of it too. But yeah. Let's see. It's been over 5 years. They've had TO teams move on. I ain't moving. Like, let's be honest, people. Do you really think I give a shit about what the common consensus is? I'm going to give my opinion whether people like it or not. Immortal with the 2 here. I need that 4 wide picture in 4K, please. Ask NASCAR. That's where I got it from. But yeah, I'll about cover it. I appreciate you guys coming on in and giving me some of your Sunday afternoon. Next week, we'll be live after Xfinity and Cup at the Roval. Should be pretty crazy in both of them. I'll just say that. Cannot wait. And then, of course, Wednesday night will be on Danny B's channel for NWP. So thank you guys for coming on in. I appreciate it a ton. And enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Have a good one, y'all. Later.